Hello everyone, welcome back to Cold Blood Files. Today, we're diving into one of the most horrifying crime cases in American history, the story of the serial killer group known as the Ripper Crew and their leader, Robin Gecht. This isn't just a series of brutal murders, it's a journey into the darkest corners of the human soul, where savagery and dark rituals intertwine to create a true nightmare. Have you ever wondered what drives ordinary people to become ruthless killers? And how could they commit such horrific crimes for so long without being caught? Join me as we uncover this chilling story, filled with mystery, torture, and unfortunate victims who suffered unforgettable horrors. Make sure you watch until the very end, because the details ahead will keep you hooked. Part 1. The background and portrait of the Ripper Crew criminals. There are shadows that never fade, even when you walk through a city glowing with lights. And that shadow was exactly where Robin Gecht, the leader of one of Chicago's most brutal serial killer groups in the 1980s, known as the Ripper Crew, lurked. Robin Gecht was not just an ordinary murderer. He was the head of a group of 4, including Edward Spritzer and 2 brothers, Andrew and Thomas Kokoralius. They didn't just commit savage murders, they were involved in dark religious rituals meant to establish control and power through violence. He once said that the killings were part of a ritual, a way to free the soul, a witness revealed during the investigation. This showed that their crimes were not just simple murders but a system built on dark beliefs and unimaginable cruelty. In the early 1980s, Chicago, a bustling city of industry and culture, became the playground for the Ripper Crew. They focused their attacks on the most vulnerable women, prostitutes, who were already marginalized and often ignored by society. These victims were targeted not only because they were accessible but also because of the lack of attention from authorities. In a society where people on the fringes were unprotected, the Ripper Crew operated freely, spreading fear across Cook County and DuPage County. They were true predators, but their prey were those society seemed to have forgotten, an investigator once said about the group. So what exactly did Robin Gecht and his accomplices do? How did they create this nightmare? And what did their unfortunate victims endure? This story will be revealed in the sections that follow. Part 2, The Path of Evil and the Twisted Rituals Behind the Curtain of Darkness. When people mention the Ripper Crew, the term serial killers still doesn't fully capture the depth of horror they brought upon their victims. These men didn't kill for money, nor for revenge. They killed as part of a ritual, a dark, disturbing ceremony they believed would grant them power and spiritual transcendence. The Ripper Crew operated in early 1980 Chicago, a time when violent crime was rising sharply, especially in poorer, neglected neighborhoods. That's where they hunted for their prey, prostitutes and women walking alone at night, often women of color, poor, or struggling with addiction. We weren't looking for fame. We were looking for the ones no one would miss. Edward Spritzer chillingly confessed to investigators. They didn't strike randomly. The group had a method. They would drive, often using Robin Gecht's red van, through desolate areas, posing as clients looking for sex. But once the woman stepped into the van, the door to hell slammed shut. No one heard the screams. No one knew where they had vanished. And no one came looking for them, at least, not right away. After abducting their victim, they would take her to one of their hidden locations, sometimes an abandoned house, other times the basement of one of the group members. That's where the women became unwilling participants in the crew's twisted satanic rituals. Investigative files and later testimonies revealed that the group operated a so-called ritual room. It was lit with red candles, marked with inverted crosses, and at its center stood a large wooden table, where victims were tied down, stripped, and prepared for sacrifice. What happened next is almost impossible to describe. But survivors and authorities described it as involving prolonged, group sexual assaults, mutilation of body parts, particularly the breasts, using knives or surgical tools, forcing victims to drink blood, psychological torture, such as coercing victims to repeat vows of allegiance to Satan. In some cases, severed body parts were stored in boxes, kept as trophies, or even used in ritualistic cannibalism. Once the victims were exhausted or dead, their bodies were dumped in industrial trash lots, vacant fields, or roadside ditches, nameless, faceless, and forgotten by a society that never protected them to begin with. What made the Ripper crew different from typical violent criminals was this: every brutal act they committed was justified through a warped religious ideology. Robin Gecht was viewed as a dark priest, the spiritual leader of the group. He had once worked as an electrician at a hospital and had a broad understanding of human anatomy. But his mind existed in another world, one where blood, pain, and sacrifice were the only paths to power. Every time they mutilated a victim, they believed they were freeing a soul for Satan, said a criminal psychologist during the 1983 trial. Robin organized rituals on full moons or dates that aligned with satanic holidays. Every crew member had a role: someone to drive, someone to capture and restrain, someone to perform the mutilation, and someone to keep the offering. It was organized. It was deliberate. And it was pure evil masquerading as faith. Among all the victims, only Beverly Washington, a young sex worker, managed to survive an attack and live to tell her story, becoming the key witness that helped bring the Ripper crew down. Fighting back tears, she recalled, "I got into the van thinking they were just regular clients. But when that door locked and I saw the knife, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake." She was drugged, restrained, and tortured. But miraculously, she was later dumped on the side of the road, still alive. Perhaps they thought she had died. Perhaps it was something else. No one knows for sure. But thanks to her detailed account of the van, descriptions of her attackers, and a tattoo seen on Edward Spritzer, the police were finally able to trace the leads back to the Ripper crew. Part 3, The Hunt begins, when silence is broken. Chicago in the early 1980s was a city buckling under the weight of rising crime. But what the Ripper crew unleashed went far beyond conventional violence. It was a blend of torture, serial murder, and satanic ritual. The problem? Police had no clear leads. Everything seemed lost in darkness, until a survivor returned from the dead. On December 6, 1982, a truck driver accidentally discovered a woman lying unconscious by a roadside in South Chicago. Her hands were bound, her body was covered in bruises and blood, and her left breast had been severed. What shocked the police most was this: she was still alive. Her name was Beverly Washington. She worked as a sex worker near 47th Street, the same area where multiple other women had vanished. When she regained consciousness in the hospital, despite immense pain and fatigue, Beverly began to recount a story that made everyone's skin crawl. They pretended to be clients. "I got into the van, and they tied me up. They injected me with something, then everything went black. I only remember red candles and twisted laughter. She described a red van, adorned inside with an inverted pentagram, a goat's head statue, and a man whose eyes looked as empty as the devil himself. But the most important detail was a tattoo of an eagle clutching a dagger on one of the attackers, later identified as Edward Spritzer. Police began combing the area where Beverly had been found, searching for red vans and men with criminal records related to assault or sexual violence. Based on Beverly's testimony and previous reports of missing women, a clearer picture began to form: a ritualistic, organized criminal group with a leader and repeated patterns of violence. Through these clues, detectives tracked down Edward Spritzer, a garage worker with a violent past. When first interrogated, Spritzer denied everything. But after several days under pressure from forensic evidence and witness testimony, he began to confess, and what he revealed left investigators speechless. Spritzer admitted to being part of a Satan-worshipping cult, led by Robin Gecht, a strange man who often muttered incantations at night and always carried a black book. Spritzer claimed that Gecht could summon Satan's spirit and demanded that the group sacrifice women to gain power. Robin Gecht was no stranger to the community. He had previously worked as an electrician at a local hospital and was described by co-workers as quiet, a little odd, but never confrontational. Some even believed Gecht had once worked for John Wayne Gacy, the notorious serial killer who murdered 33 boys. When police raided Gecht's home, they discovered a small basement room, decorated like a satanic ritual chamber. Inside were red candles, a wooden altar, books on dark magic, a wooden box containing what appeared to be human tissue, and multiple photos of women being tortured. However, there was no DNA or direct evidence at the time to immediately convict Gecht. So while police focused their attention on Gecht, they temporarily detained two other men, Andrew Kokoralius and Thomas Kokoralius, two brothers and members of the group, to expand their investigation. Under the stress of repeated questioning, Andrew Kokoralius began to talk. What he confessed forced several investigators to leave the room out of sheer shock. "We killed them as an offering to Satan. Robin gave the orders, and we followed." Andrew revealed that victims were taken to a ritual chamber, where they were gang-raped, tortured, and ultimately killed through barbaric ceremonies. Most disturbingly, after the murders, Robin would perform a cannibalistic ritual to connect with demonic power. One of the most horrific details was the removal of the victims' breasts, which the group believed to be sacrificial offerings, capable of granting them supernatural strength. After weeks of investigation, gathering evidence, and compiling testimonies, police had enough to arrest all 4 members of the Ripper crew: Robin Gecht, Edward Spritzer, Andrew Kokoralius, Thomas Kokoralius. But the biggest shock: Robin Gecht never confessed. He denied every allegation, dismissed his accomplices' confessions, and claimed they were making up stories out of jealousy. With no DNA or direct witnesses, Gecht managed to avoid the death penalty, though he was sentenced to multiple years in prison for the rape and abduction of Beverly Washington. The other members, however, undone by their own confessions and corroborating testimonies, faced the harshest sentences the law allowed. Part 4: The Chilling Trial and the Shocking Name, Robin Gecht. As the truth behind the gruesome crimes slowly came to light, the entire city of Chicago seemed to fall into a collective nightmare. People could hardly believe that, for months, they had been living side by side with a group of men performing satanic rituals in the heart of a civilized society. And what unfolded in the courtroom only deepened the horror. Robin Gecht, the one considered the mastermind and manipulative leader, walked into the courtroom with a disturbing sense of calm. No fear. No remorse. Throughout the entire trial, he kept a nearly expressionless face, as if watching a play he wasn't part of. In stark contrast, his three accomplices, Edward Spritzer and brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokoralius, gradually crumbled under the weight of the charges. What enraged the public most was that Robin Gecht was never convicted of murder, despite repeated statements from his co-conspirators that he was the ringleader, the satanic preacher, the mastermind behind every abduction, rape, and brutal killing. Why? Because of a lack of direct physical evidence. Robin never left behind DNA, fingerprints, or any solid link at the crime scenes. He was too clever. Instead, Gecht was convicted only of rape and aggravated battery in a separate case and sentenced to 120 years in prison. While that sentence was severe, many felt it still didn't reflect the full extent of his depravity. In court, Edward Spritzer and Thomas Kokoralius could no longer maintain their cold, emotionless fronts. They bowed their heads and confessed, recounting in horrifying detail how they kidnapped, tortured, and murdered women, always under Gecht's direction. Edward even testified that Gecht kept a wooden box in his bedroom, filled with severed body parts from victims, as a twisted symbol of his demonic power. One witness, Gecht's ex-girlfriend, testified in tears. She said she had seen him light black candles, chant bizarre incantations, and engage in deeply disturbing sexual behaviors. During his final statement, the prosecutor looked directly at the jury and said something that silenced the entire courtroom. "If hell exists, Robin Gecht is its messenger." Then came Beverly Washington, the only known survivor, who bravely took the stand. She pointed directly at Gecht and recounted the moment she was raped, drugged, and mutilated. She said through sobs, "I'll never forget his eyes. Cold as steel. Emotionless. I thought I was going to die. But I lived, to tell this story." In the end, Edward Spritzer was sentenced to death, later commuted to life, and Andrew Kokoralius was executed by lethal injection in 1999, the only member of the group to pay for his crimes with his life. But the most terrifying figure of all, Robin Gecht, escaped murder charges entirely. For many, this was a painful reminder of how the justice system sometimes fails, and how a cunning, manipulative mind can evade the harshest punishment, simply by hiding well enough. Part 5, The Symbol of Evil, Unanswered Mysteries Surrounding Robin Gecht. Even after being imprisoned for decades, Robin Gecht remains a name that sends chills down the spine of anyone familiar with the case. But more haunting than his crimes are the lingering mysteries that continue to surround this man, almost as if a hidden demon still lurks beneath his surface. Unlike the other three members, who were impulsive, unstable, and easily manipulated, Robin Gecht was always described as calm, composed, and highly calculating. He wasn't someone who killed out of a burst of emotion. Everything seemed premeditated, from the location, the victims, to the way he cleaned up evidence. When police searched Gecht's home, what they found was chilling: a ritual chamber draped in red fabric, lit with black candles, and decorated with satanic symbols. It was believed to be the place where dark rituals occurred, where women were sacrificed, blood was spilled, and pain and fear were worshipped like sacred offerings. Rumors have long circulated that Gecht once worked for a construction company owned by John Wayne Gacy, the infamous serial killer who murdered more than 30 teenage boys. Though no deep connection has ever been confirmed, the brief period of overlap fueled public suspicion that Gecht may have learned from the legend of evil himself. During their testimonies, the three accomplices repeatedly mentioned a cult, sacrificial rituals, and the power of darkness. But no concrete organization was ever found. Was this just a facade created by Gecht to mask his personal bloodlust? Or did a secretive group truly exist, acting under his command? What's particularly unsettling is that after his conviction, Gecht never expressed remorse. In the few interviews he gave, his responses were vague, evasive. He neither denied nor confessed, leaving just enough ambiguity to keep the public wrapped in doubt and dread. One criminologist once described Robin Gecht this way: "He didn't kill out of hate, or for pleasure. He killed to dominate, to manipulate, to prove that he was God in a world of blood." Even after Andrew Kokoralius was executed in 1999, closing a dark chapter of this case, the terror of the Ripper crew has not faded. Residents of Chicago still recall those harrowing days. And for survivors like Beverly Washington, the memory of the blade, of Gecht's cold, emotionless eyes, will forever remain an unhealed psychological scar. And Gecht? He's still alive. Still serving time in prison, not for murder, but for sexual assault. He was never officially convicted of the killings, even though nearly all circumstantial evidence pointed directly to him. And perhaps that's what makes this case so haunting. The one believed to be the true devil was never fully punished. Conclusion: when evil never truly disappears. With Robin Gecht still alive and never having been convicted for the most horrific of his crimes, the story of the Ripper crew remains disturbingly unresolved. The men who committed those unspeakable acts with him, some are dead, others are serving time, but the one believed to be the mastermind, the one who orchestrated the darkest horrors, has never fully faced justice. And that leaves a chilling feeling. Why was a man linked to so many brutal murders only convicted of rape? Was the legal system powerless against a monster who knew exactly how to hide? Or is there something deeper within society, within us, that allows evil like Robin Gecht to exist, manipulate, and kill in plain sight? No one truly knows what happened during those blood rituals the group carried out. And no one knows what secrets Robin Gecht still holds after all these years behind bars. How many more Robin Gechts are walking among us, seemingly ordinary, polite, and harmless, while secretly harboring a bloodthirsty demon within? Thank you for watching until the end. If you found this story thought-provoking, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another chilling case like this one.